homemade palm tree that my uncle had made. I ripped it down. I was like destroying it to be cool during band practice.
Sure.
And I stepped on a nail and I was like, ow. And the way it came out didn't hurt. And I was like, ow. And they stopped and like, do that again, dude. Ow.
So my name's Adam, and this podcast is all about you and your journey in music. And of course, we'll talk about, like I just said, the New Times of Grace record.
Killer.
Yeah, I don't know if you mind talking, because it's all pretty much, we're going to just dive into your backstory, if that's cool. And talking about Killswitch Engage.
Yeah, I'm an open book, man. Whatever you want.
Okay.
I'm cool. I'm easy.
Cool.
I'm easy.
Cool. Some people just want to stay away from it, so I didn't know. I just want to ask prior.
I'm easy, bro. No worries.
Cool. Thank you again, Jesse. So first off, you're born in Rhode Island, correct? Or raised in Rhode Island?
Right. Yeah. Well, predominantly raised, born in Florida.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Then moved to Missouri, and then from Missouri to Rhode Island, then from Rhode Island to Pennsylvania, then from Pennsylvania to Rhode Island, then from Rhode Island to Wisconsin, then from Wisconsin to Rhode Island, and from Rhode Island to New York. That was my.
Oh my gosh! So I was totally off.
A lot of traveling as a kid. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Was that for your parents' work?
My father, yeah, my father was following the voice of God, studying to be a minister, going to Bible college, taking up callings, starting churches. Yeah, I was a little pastor's kid. My brother and I were like the Simpsons kids, just being
Wow.
pulled along for the journey and singing "Jesus Loves You" the whole way. Yeah, it was a very interesting childhood.
How was that? Like, I mean, was it hard to move around like that? And you probably have to, change schools quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, I'm grateful for it because it
Mhm.
prepared me for being a total gypsy in life on the road. And
Sure.
I make friends fairly easily because of it. I've had to sharpen my skills, social skills. But there were definitely moments where I was really sad to leave my friends that I just made and uproot, start a new school, the anxiety of all that.
Sure.
It
That'd
was
be
it was
really hard.
difficult. It was difficult, but now that I'm grown and I look back on it, I'm grateful for it. I got to see things. I got to move around a lot. I'll never be one of those people that's stuck in the same town their entire lives. I don't understand that mentality. But
Mhm.
it's bittersweet. It's bittersweet.
Yeah, I mean, I was born and raised pretty much in the same area up until my mid 20s when I moved out for like a few years. So it's like I see, people like you that were able to move around quite a bit, especially in your adolescence, and I like really respect that, because I don't know how I'd be able to adapt to that, like making new friends right away, being the new kid probably quite often, right?
Yeah, but I think it also really made me learn to entertain myself. I do really, really well alone. In fact, I think some of the most profound, beautiful moments of my life have been alone. So if nothing else, it did give me a sense of independence. Because even with my brother, like, we got along okay, but then there was a good chunk of time where I couldn't stand him. So it
Sure.
made me very independent. And because of that, I think I became very creative too. I
Mhm.
think I was always creative, but being alone and then like having my own little world, that really, really made me a creative person and a storyteller and a poet. And, because it was all just stuff I did to entertain myself because I had
Mhm.
nobody.
So were you writing always at an early age? You talked about, story writing, poetry. Was that something that kind of came naturally to you?
Yeah, creative writing was the first thing that I loved, and then I actually started getting into theater and
Hmm.
performance. And then when I started experimenting with drugs when I was very young, namely psychedelics, that's when poetry really started to take
Oh, sure.
the front and center and has stuck ever since. It's Poetry is probably my favorite thing out of anything that I do or have done. I absolutely love writing poetry and reading poetry.
That's awesome. Have you ever thought about putting out like a poetry book or a book of
Yeah,
poetry?
I've been asked many times to write various books, but I don't know. Maybe someday. It's the amount of work and the amount of headspace I would have to occupy to get that task done seems very overwhelming. It kind of triggers my anxiety a little bit. So, not quite ready for that one yet.
Sure. Well, how did you get into music? Was it through the church?
No.
Oh, okay. I know I've talked to a lot of people where they kind of grew up in the church, and maybe that was the first time they had a chance to perform in front of people, or
Yeah.
got kind
I
of
guess I
roped into
guess
the choir.
I guess I slightly joke because I guess partially because my father was the music director for a little while when I was younger before he became a full-time minister. So he would play the guitar and sing. I actually know one of his first songs on guitar and can sing it because it was just so ingrained into me.
That's kind of cool.
That didn't really inspire me to want to do it. That was just
Mhm.
kind of part of my life as a kid going to church. Um, I think for me it was when, bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana started to come up, because I was raised on mostly like 60s rock, Simon and Garfunkel, James Taylor, Beatles, the typical stuff. And then, the 80s, I loved 80s music. I loved Michael Jackson, Madonna. I was a total 80s kid. I loved all that stuff. But, that was just part of my childhood. It didn't really hit me in the eyes until, I saw Nirvana performing on MTV. I saw Pearl Jam. So that was kind of where the spark started.
Mhm.
Um, and my brother was into Metallica and Anthrax, and I got into that stuff as well. But the first band that made me want to pick up a microphone and actually do it was Minor Threat. I
Okay.
heard them on a mixtape a friend of mine made, and my jaw hit the floor. I didn't understand what I was listening to. It was like nothing I'd ever heard before. The rage, the energy, the just like, what is this? And then I need to do this. This is nuts. What is this? So, as much as I loved and was around music and it was always a part of my life, it wasn't until I got into hardcore and punk and more
Mhm.
extreme stuff that I was like, that's okay, that's what I can do. I get that.
Did you have to was it hard to kind of like find your crew? I mean, being moving around quite a bit, was it hard to like start a band or, really pursue that as something that you wanted to eventually do?
Yeah, when I reached the age of, I think we moved right at 11, 11 and a half into 12, was back to Rhode Island to live with family and sort of put our roots down. And I think
Mhm.
my dad was feeling guilty about uprooting us every 2 to 3 years. So I did have a junior high, high school in the same place.
Okay, that's good.
And that's when music found me.
Mhm.
I was a skateboarder kid from the country, because before that I had lived in Wisconsin, so I was kind of hickish. I kind of looked different, didn't act the same as the city kids, but I was super into skateboarding. So that was kind of my look. It was a very confused, like, I don't know, hick skateboarder look,
Mhm.
and I didn't quite fit in anywhere. So I had about a year or so of my life where I was really trying hard to fit in with kids and get into the popular music at the time, and like I think it was like 91, 92. So the typical like rap and like just the stuff that was on the charts. I started dressing different because I wanted to make more friends.
Mhm.
And then I got approached by these two punk rock kids. They would show up to my volleyball practice because I was on the volleyball team. I was trying just to fit in and be
Mhm.
a sporto, and you know
Sure.
and impress the girls. I was lost. I mean, at that age you just don't really know who you are. But these kids would show up at my volleyball practice and like make fun of me. And I was like, who the hell are these kids? Like, why are they bothering me?
Mhm.
He came up to me one after the one of my practices, and this kid Marco, and he says, "Hey man, you used to be a skater. You used to be cool. Like, what happened to you? Why are you like hanging out with all these people? Come hang out with us, man. We got a band. Like, come hang out." And I was like, whoa. So they're making fun of me because they were like, come back to being a skater, come back to being cool.
Right.
Which I thought was, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I love skateboarding. I still love all that stuff. I just didn't have any friends that were into it.
Right.
And those
Because
guys,
they weren't really coming to wanting to hang out with you prior to that. Like they weren't like embracing you into their crew. It just
oh, and
sounds like.
yeah, and some of those kids used to call me a poser when I dressed. When I used to wear like the Airwalk and Vision Streetwear like shirts. So I
Uh-huh.
felt like they didn't like me. Nobody
Mhm.
liked me, so I got to get in with somebody. But yeah, so once they sort of like were like, "Hey, come hang out with us," and I knew they hung out with some of the older kids, some of the cool kids, the real
Mhm.
punks. So I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'll totally hang out with you guys." I quit the volleyball team. I joined their band. We would jam in their basement and then in my garage for like a good year, and then we finally played our first show on Halloween in 1993 at our friend's party. And that was it. I was hooked. I saw the way people reacted. I felt cool. I felt empowered. I found my clique. I found my tribe. And it was at the time, if you looked at the majority of the school of like, 200 or 300 kids, there's probably about 25 to maybe 30 punk rock alternative kind of kids. And that became my tribe. Those became my people.
Mhm.
And it was that art class, theater class, and then on weekends going up to shows. That's kind of where it all happened. I found the freaks, geeks, and weirdos, and I'm like, that's me.
That's my
I'm
crew. That's awesome. Were you always a singer? or the?
Yeah, always a singer. I mean, I had fun trying to play drums and guitar, and I can do it decently now. But
Mhm.
yeah, I've always just been the guy with the microphone going nuts. Yes.
So when you joined the band, or when you started hanging out with those kids and the band started, you were the front guy?
Yes,
Oh,
100%.
that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd call myself the front man because I was very shy. I would not make eye contact with the audience. I would just kind of like do the bend over thing where you're like, "I'm so upset about something." That was
Sure.
that was like the first couple years of me as being a vocalist. And then when I get into like really hardcore stuff, so it started out with like punk, and then I got into
Mhm.
really hardcore stuff, like more aggressive um, bands that were doing the crossover thing where they were adding metal riffs into hardcore, and it was the screaming and the yelling was becoming more prevalent. It
Mhm.
wasn't just like the typical yelling of punk rock. It became growling and screaming. Before we had all these teachers that teach this technique, and death metal was starting to really get popular in the subgenres. So extreme vocalists, I didn't have many people to look at and go, I want to do it that way. So I just kind of figured it out. And while I was jamming with that band one day, I stepped on a nail because we were in like this really, my garage was like a dirt floor, planks of wood everywhere. And I was spazzing out and I grabbed this, it's like this homemade palm tree that my uncle had made. I ripped it down. I was like destroying it to be cool during band practice.
Sure.
And I stepped on a nail and I was like, ow. And the way it came out didn't hurt. And I was like, ow. And they stopped and like, do that again, dude. Ow. And like press record on the little crappy 4-track player, because that's what we used to do, record our practices and
Uh-huh.
try to figure what the hell we were doing. And I just kept mimicking that weird noise I was making with a nail in my foot. And that's kind of how I learned how to scream.
Oh my gosh.
True story, man. True story.
That is crazy. Did you have to get a tetanus shot after practice?
I had already, my mom was a nurse, so I had all my shots. Everything was,
That's good. Oh man. Imagine like if you would have never stepped on that nail.
yeah, I don't know. It's really weird and it's a funny story, but it's 100% true.
Oh my gosh. So from that nail, you kind of found your voice.
100% did. Yeah. I mean, it would be a struggle for the next 20 years, but yeah, I found my voice initially from the nail.
Okay. Well, how long were you in that band for?
Oh, I don't know. I'd say maybe like a year and a half. And we played that one Halloween show, and that was kind of it. It was a
Okay.
high school band.
Yeah.
And then shortly after that one, I had jammed with a couple of kids from high school, and it never amounted to anything. And then when I started going out into the city of Providence and discovering a whole other world, I'd go to shows, I'd go with my friends, we'd go home because I was young.
Hmm.
The moment I started to get freedom and I had a car or I could convince my mom to drop me off, I would start making friends outside of high school, the older kids. And I'd
Hmm.
start going to record shops and places where kids would hang out during the day when they weren't at shows, hanging out with the punks, hanging out with all the freaks and weirdos that were older that were out in the city.
Hmm.
That's when I discovered, people were, because back then people would put up flyers, with the little
Right.
pieces of paper you tear off.
Oh yeah.
Singer wanted, and it was like the influences were bands I was obsessed with at the time, a band called Bloodlet, a band called Integrity, Earth Crisis. It was all these bands that I was absolutely obsessed with. And those were looking for a singer. And I ripped one of those things off. I called this guy Joe, who at the time was 23 years old. I was 17. And I joined his band, Corinne. And I was the baby. I was the little kid. I was the kid they were sneaking in the door. I was the kid that had to get X's on my hands because I was too young to drink. Like,
Hmm.
my life started at 17, and weekends I was going down to Virginia playing animal rights festivals. I was traveling, I was touring. Even before I
Whoa.
got out of high school, I was jumping in the van with a bunch of older dudes and doing my thing. And that's really when it kicked off, and I started to actually see money and started to get notoriety, and people knew me as that crazy kid that would drool on stage. It was kind of my thing. Silly stuff, but I loved intimidating and getting in people's faces and doing weird shit.
Wow. And that band was around for a while, right? You released some records and an
Yeah,
EP and
there's a full CD discography, if you can find it on the internet. And there's probably I think there's one song you can find on Spotify under the band name Corinne. But I'm currently trying to get the masters to actually remaster and release it digitally because I think it's worthy of it.
that's cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting mix of hardcore, sort of dark ambient, weird metal. It's hard to
Mhm.
explain, but it's a real hybrid. But yeah, eventually I'd love to try to get that out. Just it's hard to get a hold of everybody that we recorded with back then because, you know, studios with the little reels and like that,
Right.
it's not digital at all.
Because that was what the mid '90s. I'm sure a lot of that probably got lost in the shuffle somewhere. Or
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. I think the compilation CD came out in '95, and we had already broken up at that point.
oh wow,
Yeah,
okay,
it's difficult to find that anywhere. But there is one track. I think "Seed of Cain" is the name of the song you can find on Spotify and in any other digital format.
that's rad. At least one of them saved, right? Well, I'm curious to know, like, coming from such a religious background and having your dad such a big part of the church, like, was he must have been he was cool with the fact that you were like, oh, I'm 17, I'm gonna go hit the road, I'm gonna be hanging out with these kind of degenerate like style kids.
Funny, I just talked about this. So I have a podcast called "Stoke the Fire" with my friend Matt, and we had my dad on.
Oh, cool.
He actually talked about that, and I knew about it kind of, but hearing him tell the story from his point of view, he pretty much just started to loosen up at that point with his, because he was a total totalitarian lawgiver, you know, hellfire and brimstone kind of guy up until a certain age. So I couldn't listen to secular music. They had to, like, if I brought a cassette tape home, you know, before CDs, they would have to go through and read the lyrics. And
Oh,
if
like
I had a,
screen it.
yeah, and if I had a parental advisory sticker, which they started putting on in the '80s, I couldn't listen to it. So I would sneak over my friends' houses. I'd watch MTV there because MTV was not allowed in my house. So I got a lot of, it was my new drug, you know. I had to go sneak around and find it and get it. And before they knew it, I was obsessed. And then before they knew it, it was like, are you going to support your son and like what he loves more than anything? Or are you going to continue to like prohibit him?
Mhm.
So I think they made a decision to like, okay, we're going to support him and allow him to be creative and just hope he makes the right decision. But even when I first started writing lyrics, they wanted to read the lyrics. They wanted to know what I was talking about. And I remember I was purposely cussing in the lyrics because I was like, no, I don't want to do what you're telling me to do, you know, like,
Right, right.
but eventually I came around and yeah, I didn't curse in any of my, like, from that band Corinne on till like even 2 years ago, I never dropped an F-bomb in any song ever. I always tried to write intelligently and have a message there. So I think the whole pastor's kid thing rubbed off, at least to the point of like, I put messages in my song. You know, I talked about love. I talked about different things than bands were talking about in my genre.
Mhm.
But you know, the hyper religiousness, that didn't stay on me. That's not, that definitely not who I am at all. And my parents have loosened up as much as they're still full on church going Christians. They're much more open minded and supportive. And now they're like huge fans of what I do, which is great.
Cool. That says something about you and in your songwriting and just the fact that you don't have to use cuss words in your lyrics to get your point across. I think
Yeah.
that's
The first band I did that in is my punk band called The Weapon. Um, and I remember doing it on the recording. We're all standing around and I looked at them all. I was like, oh, that felt good. I'm like, what are you talking about? I was like, this is the first time I've ever cussed in a song. And they're like, whoa, it felt good. It's because it was appropriate. I was pissed. It's an angry song. But yeah, that's probably the only project I'll ever do that on. I just don't feel the need for it, you know? I think it takes away from the poetry of it. It takes away from the storytelling, personally, at least from what
no.
at least from what I've done, you know?
And obviously you don't need to do it if you you know the success that you have achieved without doing it. It's like people obviously aren't like, can you believe he's not cussing? Like they wouldn't, it's not even that big of a deal, obviously, to your fans.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. If it works, do it. If it doesn't, don't force it. You know. And
Hmm.
I never felt like it worked for me until you know that album, the Weapon album, which you can look that up on any digital platform. And it's really fast, angry punk rock, and I think it's appropriate in those songs.
There you go. Well, Jesse, what happened after Corinne? You said the band broke up around 95. Is that when
Yeah,
Nothing Stays Gold started?
correct. Yeah, that was the guitar player from Corinne and myself started that band, and that was very short lived. We played a ton of shows. And yeah, that band is just we were trying to do something that just wasn't working. We were
Hmm.
really blending the melodic and the screaming before we had a real direction of how to do that. So it's very jarring. We'd go into these almost emo like parts of the songs and then go right into a screaming part. So there was no real crafting of like that particular style.
Hmm.
And it's very jarring. And you can find that stuff online too, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's not very good. Learning
And
experience, you know?
sure, I mean, you got to grow, right?
And then from that, so that particular project was put out on a record label called Devil's Head Records, which was owned and run by Adam D from Killswitch's brother Toby.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
kind of the in. But Corinne would play shows with Adam D's band Aftershock and Mike D, the bass player's band Overcast. So we all knew who each other were. And then when Toby, who had just put our record out and found out that I quit, excuse me, found out that I quit, he let Adam know, and Adam was working on a project where he needed a vocalist, and that's kind of where it all started. I got a phone call from Adam, and he asked me to work with him on this. He was doing these weird psychedelic Pink Floyd style renditions of Slayer songs. I kid you not. I wish we would have done it, and I wish it saw the light of day. But it was supposed to be like 4 or 5 songs on like a 7-inch little vinyl.
Uh-huh.
He wanted me to do one of them, and it fell through. But we stayed in touch, and very shortly thereafter, I got the phone call like, "Hey, man, Aftershock is doing a side project with Mike D from Overcast. We need a singer. We've been auditioning people and nothing's working out. Would you be willing to drive up to Massachusetts and check it out?" So I did, and I absolutely loved it. We did 6 songs, and then that was it. They asked me to join. And that was before we
Wow.
had a name, before we had anything. And it was, Joel was in Aftershock at the time, so it was Adam and Joel from Aftershock and Mike D from Overcast, and then myself, the 4 of us. And that's how
Wow.
Killswitch started.
Oh, interesting. I was wondering how you got up to Massachusetts from Rhode Island, how that connection happened, but there
Yeah,
you go.
yeah. I drove to Mike D's house in Worcester, and then from Worcester, Massachusetts, we drove another, an hour and a half out to Westfield. So it was a journey for me, and I made that journey at least once a week for a long time.
Oh, wow. Because you
Yeah,
stayed in Rhode Island.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that
Oh,
every
wow.
every Saturday morning, I'd leave my house at like 7 a.m. and yeah, we'd roll up to Joel's house at like 11, and Joel would legitimately roll out of bed. He was still at his, and it was at his parents' house. So it was in his bedroom at his parents' house. Roll out of bed, kick open his refrigerator, grab a beer, drink a beer. We'd start jamming at like 11:10 a.m.
In his room.
Yeah, his mom like, "How you boys doing? Guys want some lunch?" Like, yep.
That's awesome. Well, kind of similar how Times of Grace started as far as like the music goes, right? Adam had some songs and you guys kind of got back together as far as forming, he wanted a vocalist.
Yeah. Yeah, he initially so he had written those songs while in the hospital in
Hmm.
London with a back injury, and he didn't feel like they worked, or didn't, he just didn't feel like they were Killswitch material, and he wanted to do something different with it. And he initially was going to do it on his own. It was going to be just his stuff,
Hmm.
and he felt stifled with his lyric writing and his ideas. So somehow, I entered his head, and that's when I got the phone call. And I want to say 2008, that was, where I had been out of Killswitch for already,
Hmm.
chunk of time. They'd seen tons of success. They've toured the world. They become massive. And I had done some touring with my band Seamless at the time, so I was in Seamless for about 5 years or so, which was more of like a stoner kind of rock and roll band, more like Soundgarden, Corrosion of Conformity, Kaya's kind of vibe. That was a whole other lifetime of learning how to sing and learning how to tour again. And so that failed completely miserably. We, towards the end of our run there, we were playing to like 20, 25 people.
Oh,
Just
wow.
It just didn't work out. And I
Hmm.
went home with my tail tucked between my legs to Rhode Island, and I couldn't afford my mortgage at the house that I was living in. So I had to sell it and move in with my parents for a year. And I was working as a valet parker, like just at my entire life just bottomed out,
Hmm.
broke, $80,000 in debt from that house. Just, what am I going to do with my life?
Hmm.
Parking cars for rich people in Scarsdale, New York. And I get this phone call from Adam, and he's like, "Hey, I got this thing, it's just going to be a project, studio project, but are you in?" And from that point, it was like, it gave me this sense of hope and sense of purpose. It legitimately saved my life, I think, because I was on a dark path, and I was really depressed and self-medicating and, you know, just
Mhm.
going through a rough spot. And that's what started my journey with Times of Grace, which eventually just put me back on my feet again as a writer, and as, you know, everything just started to come together after that, you know, which it didn't directly lead into, but it led into me rejoining Killswitch because I just got my feet back in it.
Mhm.
Because Killswitch was on a hiatus at the time, you know, when Adam came back in 2009, they put out their self-titled album, and things really just started to fall apart with them and Howard.
Mhm.
That made way for Times of Grace to be released because that album was done and it was sitting on a shelf. You know,
Oh, it was
Killswitch
finished, but you didn't put it out yet.
sat on the shelf for almost 2 years.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we finished it. It was done. Roadrunner Records, you know, picked it up, and you know, Killswitch was on Roadrunner Records,
Mhm.
but we couldn't interfere. Obviously, you can't, when Killswitch is doing their thing. There's not going to be any competition. They're not People aren't going to pay attention to what we're doing if Adam's doing stuff for Killswitch. So because they parted ways with Howard and had that whole thing happened, it allowed Times of Grace to have its moment.
Mhm.
It allowed us to put out the record. It allowed us to go on tour, which we never even intended on touring for that at all. It was never intended to be a live thing. It was just going to be a studio project that we were going to do every once in a while when Adam had time. So all that stuff just kind of happened like crazy. And before I knew it, I was in Europe playing in front of more people than I've ever played in my life. And the first time I ever stepped foot in Europe was with Times of Grace.
Really? You hadn't been out there before? Well, what didn't Killswitch had success when you were in the band though in the beginning? I mean,
Not
not
really, no. I mean,
Oh.
we put Alive or Just Breathing out and did a full headline tour in the US. Well, not a headline tour, did an opening slot tour in the US, and then I bailed. So I
Okay.
never saw success. I never knew what it was like to be on a tour bus. I never knew what it was like to be, you know, signing autographs. I didn't do any of that stuff.
Oh, see, I was under the impression that because that record did well, right? I mean, it
Yeah,
sold.
after I left.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow. So the first time you, like you just said, the first time you had ever stepped foot in there, London, and you were playing to these massive crowds but I'm curious to know. So he was because Adam got hurt, right? He had surgery.
Right.
So when he just stayed there, was he living there, or like how did that?
He was stuck there because they had to operate. He couldn't fly back home with that injury.
Oh,
He was
okay.
stuck there for I mean, don't quote me on this, at least a month, just between the surgery and recovery. Then flew home, and, you know, because of his surgery, he was able to like move again, and he was back at it. And the next tour, he was back out.
Hmm.
So he recovered and, you know, resumed the career. And then, you know, they recorded that second self-titled record, and just things fell apart. And then
Hmm.
Times of Grace, it was like, oh, since this isn't working out, Roadrunner Records is like, well, now we'll put out Times of Grace. We're like, let's do it.
Okay.
Oh, if we're going to put out Times of Grace and Killswitch isn't doing anything, what do you guys think of playing some shows? Whoa, okay, I guess, but I have a job. And then it was like when the record label stepped in and gave us our advance, and, you know, basically was like, hey, you know, actually, right around the same time, no, I'm getting my timeline. I take reverse. So because of the advance that I got from my publishing, which I'd never gotten any of this stuff ever, I didn't know there was money in this. I
Hmm.
really was ignorant. I had enough money where I could buy a new car and quit my job and actually just focus on Times of Grace. And that's when I quit my job, and it was like I started to rehearse with the band, and I bought myself a new car, and it was like, whoa, this is my life now. And oh yeah, our first, you know, we're gonna go over to Europe and play the festivals, and gonna go to Germany, and it was just like this. It all just happened so quick. It was crazy.
Wow. Tell me about that moment going into your job and saying, "Hey, I'm back. I'm doing this. I'm doing music again. See you guys later."
I still have the photo somewhere. I worked. So that particular job that I was parking cars at, I was there for 4 years. In 4 years, I worked my way up to upper management.
Oh
So
wow.
I went from the valet to sitting in on meetings with, you know, the board of trustees and the doctors of a medical facility, and being a partial manager, dealing with ordering of the medicines, dealing with people's schedules, and, you know, their punching in, punching out, and payroll. So I was like a full on suit.
Yeah, you had a pretty important job. It sounds
Went
like.
from valet to like full on suit. So I had my own little office, my own little cubby hole. You know, people knew my name. I'd walk around and go to the different offices. Everybody knew who I was. And they all knew I was a musician. People kind of knew, but you know, you forget that when you're there for 4 years. People are like, he's just that guy that's, you know, helps out the CEO.
Mm-hmm.
So when the time came, and I gave a good month's notice because I knew my jobs, plural, had to be filled by people to do, because I did a lot there. I took on a lot. Yeah, and I remember I shaved my head into a mohawk, and started wearing a cap. And I remember one of the doctors being like, "You're always wearing that cap." I'm like, "Yeah, because I'm out of here." And I pull it off, and he's like, "Oh, interesting." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm counting down the days," and I have this photo. It was my calendar that I used to use for scheduling, and it was these red X's, and on the bottom it says, "How many days till freedom?" So every single day I would exit, 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 and then I went into my little cubby hole with the what do you call those things that surround the desk in the corporate building? God,
Your cubicle?
yeah, I went to my cubicle, right, with my screw gun, because I also did fix-it stuff. You know, if
Okay.
somebody had a chair, office equipment need building, I was that guy too. So I took the screws of my thing and I loosened them up everywhere. And on that last day, my boss came over and they're all like, everyone's like, "Congratulations!" And I kicked all the walls down. I took my arm and like over my desk, like you'd see in a movie. I legitimately did all those things, and everyone was laughing, thought it was funny. And I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm going on a plane. I'm going to Europe, and I'm done. And that was it. I haven't worked a regular job since then.
That's
Actually, that's
incredible.
a lie. The Grace existed for a while, and then Killswitch was supposed to come back
Mm-hmm.
and write a record because they, you know, were trying to work things out with Howard. So there was a good year there where I had to go back to work.
Oh, okay, because you weren't sure what was going on with Killswitch.
Yeah, Times of Grace was put to the side. Killswitch was given a budget for the new record, which would become Disarm the Descent. So they realized it wasn't working out with Howard, and you know, they parted ways. And that's when I got the phone call, "Do you want to rejoin the band?" I, at the time, was working at a bar in New York City. And I said no. I said, I can't see myself singing Howard songs. And to me, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want Times of Grace to continue, man. I love
Mm-hmm.
Times of Grace. Like, why are we not doing Times of Grace? So I selfishly was like, no, I don't want to sing for Killswitch. I want to continue doing Times of Grace. So
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I'm like, I'm just biding my time. Like, hopefully Killswitch is just gonna go away then.
And then yeah, you guys could take over.
So then I hear they're gonna hold auditions, and I remember getting a text message from a friend of mine in my band Empire Shall Fall at the time, because I had started Empire Shall Fall while I was working at that medical facility. So weekends I was still playing shows. I was still
Oh,
like
okay.
still dipping my toes in.
Uh-huh.
So I got a text from the bass player there, and he's like, "Dude, did you hear they're auditioning for like a third singer?" And I was like, "Oh man, that sucks. Third singers never work out." And then I'm thinking to myself, should I just give this a shot? And that night at my shift at the bar, this kid came in. He sat at the bar. And at the time I was bar backing. I wasn't even a bartender. I was training to, because it was one of those cocktail bars where you've got to like make everything look really nice.
Oh, sure. It
And
wasn't just like some dive bar you'd be pouring
oh,
beers.
I had to study gin. I had to study whiskey. We had to know where they came from. So when someone sat down at our bar and you ordered a particular gin, we could tell you the botanicals. We could tell you where it came from as we're crafting this beautiful cocktail, which just, it looked a certain way. So it was one of those high end places. So I was training. And in my mind, like, yeah, I'm going to be a professional mixologist. That's my thing. So that was the path I was on. So before my first shift as an actual bartender, which I believe was going to be the next night, this kid came in. He sat at the bar and he's like, "You look really familiar." And I'm like cleaning the glasses and organizing, and the bartenders are like kind of chuckling. "Weren't you the singer for Killswitch Engage?" And I'm like, "Ugh." He's like, "Yeah, I used to be." He's like, "What the hell are you doing here? Like cleaning glasses? Like what? What?" He was just so baffled that I was doing this job. And his reaction, whoever this person is, I got to thank him. I don't even know who this person was, but I remember sitting there and I'm cleaning the glasses and I got that text message from my friend. And I just remember thinking to myself, yeah, what am I doing? So I texted back, and I texted their management, who I'd still kept in touch with. And in my mind, my gears were turning. I'm like, I'll go audition for this thing. Maybe we can do like an Elaborate Breathing reunion tour. And then maybe I can work on the new record, and, you know, maybe it'll be cool. We can work it out. So I texted the managers and they're like, all right, what do you want to do? You said no, so you can't just walk back in. You got to like,
Oh, they made you go through the process of auditioning again.
So I said, okay, well, put me on the list to audition. Put me last. So they audition everybody they need to do. I'll come in last, and what do they want me to do? I know my material. I'll start working on the elaborate breathing stuff. And it was like, no, well, if you're going to do this, they don't want to just do your songs. You have to learn some Howard stuff. So it's like, oh man, okay. So what's the list? They sent me a list of stuff that was necessary for the audition. And that's when I was like, all right, I think I can do this. It beats bartending. It beats all this stuff. So the next day I go in, and I start learning the stuff. And within 2 weeks, the audition was in 2 weeks. So I had to get somebody to cover my shift to go do the audition. I had my work uniform on and everything. Like I had left, went to do the audition. We had so much fun. I learned, I think Arms of Sorrow was the first song I really connected with, and was like, oh, I can do this. This song is awesome. I really enjoy this. I connect with the lyrics. I can embody this and make it my own and feel like I'm not going up there being a cover singer.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I think I learned like 8 of his songs, and then 8 of mine. And we jammed, we had fun. And they were, they started early in the morning and I came in last. So they were pretty exhausted when I walked in the door. But 3 or 4 songs in, you could feel the energy. You could feel everyone was smiling and like we were joking, and it just felt right. It felt good.
Mm-hmm.
When we were done, I sat them all down. I was like, look, I know I turned this down. I know I quit before. If you give me a chance, I won't let you down. And, I know you got this album like musically done. I'll work on the record while we tour. Like whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. Let's go. And like, all right, we'll call you. We'll let you know. So I left. I went home, went to sleep, and I woke up to a voicemail, and it was their management, Vaughn, and he says, "Hey, give me a call back. Got to talk to you." So I call back, and he's like, "You might know what I'm going to say right now, but I'm going to say it anyway. Do you want your fucking job back or not, bro?" I was like, hell fucking yeah, I do.
Yes, I do.
And then I went to my job the next day. I walked in with this shit-eating grin on my face, and I went up to the beverage director who was preparing me for my first shift as bartender.
Oh, so you finally got to move up from bar back.
Trained up. Like I did all this training. They invested all this time, like I was going to be the new guy. And I said, the other guy we've been working with too, because there was another guy who was training with me. I was like, he might be the guy. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I got the job. He's like, oh, that's awesome. But oh no, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So he like disappears. He goes make some phone calls. He comes back and he goes, you're fine. We'll have the other guy, Daniel, take over. He's ready. So this is it. You're done. You're good. And the owner and the chef came up and we all did shots. I ripped my shirt off. I threw it into the trash.
You knocked all the drinks down like you did the other night, did a circle.
I drank them all. Is what I got hammered. And then I woke up the next day, and that was the last job I ever worked.
Wow. And then, I mean, Howard he co-signed on what you were doing too, which is probably a validating moment, I would think, right?
Eventually he did. We didn't have any contact. I mean, I didn't really even know him. So when I was in that band Corinne way back, he was in a band called Driven. And we used to play shows together too. So I always knew him as that awesome gospel-y sounding singer from that band Driven. He was a super friendly guy. But I didn't know him personally. I mean, I knew Blood Has Been Shed. We'd played shows with him with Killswitch. So yeah, me walking into the situation, and there's a lot of things that were left unsaid, and those guys weren't in contact with him. So there was a couple of years there where Howard was like the ex-wife, like they're always talking about the ex, and it was just like draining, and like, it was a weird few years of them sort of getting over a lot of stuff. And then finally they started to squash it with him. And just realized, because listen, you get older, you let things go, and I'm so grateful for that, because there's nothing worse than that band that constantly talks about their ex-lead singer, because everybody does it, and those guys never publicly did it. They never trashed him. They never did any of that stuff, and vice versa. A lot of respect. So once that was all sort of healed up, and then he started doing Devil You Know, and then he actually showed up to a show. So it was a very slow process. But that
Okay.
first show that he showed up to, we invited him out, and he came out and hung out. He stood side staged and watched, and I was so nervous and so anxious, like, oh, this guy's gonna watch me butcher his songs. Great. Here we go.
Yeah, that must have been terrifying, I
It
would
kind of
imagine.
was, man. And then he just gave me a huge hug when I came off stage. He's like, "You killed it, bro. You did really good." And I was like, "Really? Yeah, man." And then, long story short, we hung out that entire night. He came on our tour bus, and we became very fast friends. Realized we had a lot in common, a lot of musical stuff we enjoyed, and yeah, he basically was like, "I'm proud of you." And then we talked, and I vented to him about my frustration. I was like, "Dude, I can never live up to your voice. Like, fuck you, man. You're too good at it. So annoying. Like, I try so hard." He's like, "You're doing great. Knock it off." And he's like, "You know what? I'm gonna give it right back to you. When you quit, I had to like live up to Alive Just Breathing. I didn't write any of that stuff." He's like, "That was hard." He's like, "So fuck you back. Shit is hard, man. It wasn't easy for me." He's like, "You're not the only one that had it hard."
Right.
We had a really good laugh about it, and then we put on some hip hop on the bus and bummed everybody out. No one in Killswitch really likes hip hop except for me, and Howard does. So it's like
Sure.
automatically was like, "My man, yeah." And then I had a real deep heart to heart with him, and then he played me early demos of that first Light the Torch, and I just looked at him and was like, "Dude, this is it. This Light the Torch is it." Like, I like Devil, it's good, but that first Light the Torch to me was like, he's back. Like, he's back in full effect. And yeah, I just started like posting about his band, wearing his t-shirt, supporting him, and it
That's
just
cool.
shortly became like, we're family, and we're gonna
Mhm.
have him out on stage, and he's gonna sing some stuff with us, and we're gonna make a song with him. And that was it. It was like, we're making a song. We're gonna just squash anyone who's talking shit or thinks we have beef. Let's make it public. We're
Mhm.
cool. And it's been awesome ever since.
I love that. I had a chance to actually interview Howard about Light the Torch and their new record, and he's just such a sweet guy. Like, I can't imagine him being like, butting heads or anything kind of with you. I
Yeah, I
just
think
feel.
the whole like what he was going through, he just lost himself, man. That's all it
Mhm.
was. Like, you think about like their rise to notoriety and fame. Killswitch was huge at one point, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah. I
huge.
mean, Grammy or Grammy nominated and everything else.
So yeah, I was nominated twice, by the way.
I know you were, but I'm just saying, when we were talking about
I'm
his.
kidding. I'm totally kidding. I did it for a laugh.
I
No,
know you did, but.
I think it's just you get caught up in the lifestyle. You get caught up in what people are saying about you, and it's really easy to lose yourself. And I think all those guys got a little mixed up for a while there.
Mhm.
And it's easy to happen. It even happened to me a little bit when I first got back in it. You just like, you're so wowed by the lifestyle. You're so wowed by people telling you you're great, and you kind of get caught up in it. And then, you have hard lessons, or, you have a moment where you're like, wow, I'm really not as cool as I think I am. Like, calm down, dude. You got a long way to go. So that's
Mhm.
been my road. But yeah, it's been great to reconnect with him. And
Yeah.
City of Fire was like,
I was
so-
gonna say, I love that video. Just like you guys, interacting in the music video, and like you do the fist pump. Like, you could just tell there's like so much love there. I love that. I love that video. It's one of my
yeah,
favorite ones.
there's a lot of jokes, a lot of happiness. And then Ian McFarlane, who directed that, was kind of the brains behind some of that stuff too, just because, he's behind the camera looking at like, this is how it's going to go.
Hmm.
But yeah, that if you were to walk on that set and be in that room, it was a super fun vibe. Everybody that was there was like, this is awesome. It's going to be cool.
Yeah, you could tell that there's this cool energy when you watch the music video.
Yeah, I remember standing behind the camera when it's panning to Howard sitting there, and he grabs the mic, and I got chills. I'm like, people are going to love that shot. That's so
Sure.
cool.
Yeah. It is amazing. I want to talk to you now about, obviously, the new Times of Grace stuff, but I'm curious to know, where were you at when the whole, world shut down with the pandemic, and was that kind of a reason why you guys started Times of Grace again, or like, tell me about that?
Once again, Times of Grace album was written,
Oh, it was. Okay.
completed, ready to, like, pretty much ready to go, I'd say, before the pandemic hit. So all the vocals were done, everything was tracked, it was done. We had been
Okay.
working on that thing for 5 to 6 years in between touring and
Oh,
our busy
wow.
schedules. So the album was done. And then when the pandemic hit, we sort of shopped around for a label to see if there was any interest, decided to go with, a distribution company, ADA, where we would retain all rights and ownership, and they would just help us promote and put it out. And then Adam remixed the album 7 or 8 times. He reamped stuff, so he was doing all this crazy tweaking. We got it mastered, and then when we decided to put it out, it was another couple months. So had it not been for the pandemic, this album wouldn't be coming out. It would probably not come out till next year, because when the pandemic hit, we were on tour promoting Atonement. It was our first headline run with Light the Torch on the bill. August Burns Red. We were on day 2 of that tour, and day 3 we got sent home. So
where were you guys when? I'm
we
sure
were
how.
we
Yeah,
were
go
on a
ahead.
day off in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So we were all just enjoying our day off in Pittsburgh and getting ready to go to Philadelphia to play the next show, and that next show didn't happen.
Did
And then
you know it was like there's? I'm sure there was like whispers of what was happening. Like, did you notice that at all at the shows, the 2 shows prior? Like,
no,
you
no,
didn't know it was full of people. Nobody
we,
was like
yeah.
worried about it at this point.
And I had, previous to that tour, I had just taken my first real vacation in my entire life, and I went to Thailand for a month. And over in Thailand, there was, even with the coverage and stuff going down, there was zero, like nobody was even worried about it. We were down in the islands, and we didn't even know until we got to the airport to fly home, my girlfriend and I, when we saw people wearing masks, and it was like the fear was starting to happen, the panic. And even then I was like, I'm sure we'll be fine. It's always different in the States. All these pandemics and things happen other places. They don't,
Right. It doesn't
they
happen
never
at
really
home.
affect us. Yeah. It doesn't,
Yeah.
it's never shut us down in the past. It's going to be fine. So when it did, it was like, okay, this is going to be a couple weeks. We'll reschedule. It's going to be fine. No big deal.
Mhm.
And then when that didn't happen, it was just like, wow, now what? And then,
Right.
and then a few weeks pass, and it was like, oh, well, at the very least, let's start figuring out times of grace. If we're just sitting around with our thumbs in our asses, let's put out a record. Screw it.
Yeah.
It was a
So
happy accident.
that's kind of what, really lit the fire under you guys to push out the record then?
Yeah, we realized that we weren't going on tour anytime soon, so let's just do it. It's now or never, because once we go back out on the road come September, Killswitch is going to continue promoting Atonement again. So we've got this window of time to get this out and give it a proper rollout. As far as like playing out, I don't know what's going to happen with that. There's talk of it, but once this world allows us to get back out there, which it slowly already is, Killswitch has got a lot of stuff to do before Times of Grace is able to do anything.
I would imagine.
At the very least, the album will be out. Hopefully people will like it. So when the time comes for us to play a show, there'll be interest for it,
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I love the new songs that you've put out so far, and I love that you put out The Burden of Belief as kind of the first one, and how much different it is than traditional songs, even from Killswitch, obviously.
Yeah, that's intentional. I think we put that one out first because we wanted people to know this is a different one. And yeah, there's more of that mellow. I would say there's even more mellow stuff than that one. There's some really quiet tracks, and I love it. To me, it just stimulates a different part of my brain, and allows Adam and I to have more creative expansion. There's no real rules with this, no real expectation, and it's been 10 years since our last record, so people can't expect it to be the same thing. Like, it would be so boring to me. And I'm kind of tired of doing the same thing. With Killswitch, we've got our signature sound. We kind of stay within kind of confines of who we are. And to me, that gets exhausting. So this is a nice outlet, and it just gives freedom to like just not worry about a genre or a sound, and put out a soft sounding song with some piano in it, and put out a song that's kind of rock, country, stoner, like just who cares? We do what we want. Awesome.
I love it. Yeah, it's a great record. I mean, your voice is so good that you can sing. It's not like you need to do the screaming all the time, and you don't, even in Killswitch.
Yeah, it's funny, man. I've been doing screaming since I was 16, 17 years old, and
since you stepped on that nail.
Yeah, and I do like it, but now that I've just, especially after the vocal surgery in 2018, when I had to go get nodules taken off my throat, and I truly thought for about 3 months I was done. The doctor couldn't reassure me, like, when we're done with this, you may not be able to do it. Yeah. So then I took vocal lessons and learned how to sing again with Melissa Cross. And then my voice was doing things I could never do before because I always had these nodules. I didn't know it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to sing live and I'm going flat, I'm going sharp, and there's YouTube evidence everywhere. Like I'm not the greatest, most controlled singer live. And it was because I had these nodules for all this time. So now that I finally have the freedom and I do have vibrato and I'm starting to learn how to sing properly, I want to sing more.
Mm-hmm.
So like moving forward, I'm really looking forward to figuring out my voice and going with Times of Grace. It allows me to go into my lower register, which is a rounder part of my voice. It's just, to me, it sounds better. And I feel like as I get older too, it's more comfortable. So the higher stuff that I do, I'm trying to do it less. The screaming that I've been doing, I'm trying to do it less. And with Times of Grace, it allows me to just flex another side of my voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. To me, it's exciting to explore different parts of my voice that I've really not been able to do. So I'm looking forward to more of that across the board, just taking my voice in different directions and not leaning on what I've been doing for so long, and expanding my repertoire as a vocalist.
Do you feel like that kind of sparked the We Carry On, like the acoustic version of that song you guys did for the quarantine?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that version. I think it's so rad. I mean, it says so much about not only you as a vocalist, but the band being able to reimagine,
Yeah.
such a heavy Killswitch song into this beautiful piano acoustic. I love it.
Yeah, I was really inspired by this guy too, who does this thing on he's on YouTube, Killswitch Engage. He's got like 1 million views. He does piano covers of Killswitch songs. And I was inspired by that as well. I've actually reached out to that guy and talked to him and told him like he's done a great job. So anyone listening there, go to look at Killswitch Engage. He's a brilliant piano player and he reimagines all Killswitch stuff with this really cool piano style.
I love that. And I love the song that you guys chose. I mean, what a perfect, song for
We were, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Why we did it, bro.
Yeah, I mean, right up the middle. It's perfect. But so obviously Times of Grace Records coming out next Friday.
Wow. Yeah, is it next Friday already?
Isn't it the 16th?
Yeah, it is the 16th. I don't know what day it is, dude. I've been in this weird time warp.
Right, it's still 2020 or something. You know what I mean?
The walls around me, dude. I'm stuck in the void, bro. I've been doing this for days, just talking to people about the record. I don't know what day it is. I'm not even joking. I don't know what day it is till you just said that.
That's so funny.
Where's my phone? What is today?
It's the 8th. It's the 8th. Just so you know.
I wish I was joking. I am not. Anyway.
Wow. Well, it sounds like, so you said there's a lot more mellow stuff on the record. I mean, the 3 songs you've put out kind of builds. I mean, the most recent one's pretty heavy.
Yeah. There's a mixed bag of stuff, and there's actually even songs that didn't make the record that are heavier. We specifically kept them off because we wanted this album to, first of all, be cohesive, but second of all, take people on a different journey, and hence the title. It's really, we took the songs that worked best with that theme and we did a lot of wrestling with that. That was months of us song order, which, what goes first, what stays on. And the song Rescue, which, we just premiered fairly recently, that wasn't even going to be on the record because it didn't fit so well.
Because it's a heavier song, right?
It's heavier.
That's
a
heavy.
little, it's a little more like the first record. It's super positive kind of because it's about love and about like finding your way again. But after listening to the album without that on it, and I was rooting for that song from the beginning because I love that song. It's about me and about what I went through and about my girlfriend and my relationship, and it's a love song. And I've never really written a blatant love song, and I did, and I'm proud of it. It's like, this is cool, and it adds such a different air. It's almost like a break. It's like this little beacon of light amidst this dark record. And then Adam was like, you know what? Yeah, I want that song on the record. Let's put it third. And I was like, whoa, that's jarring. He was like, no, it's cool. And then we listened to it in that order, and I was like, yeah, it's such an interesting way to do it. And then from there, it kind of all goes downhill, like emotionally wise, and goes very dark and very mellow. But yeah, I think you're gonna go on a ride. I'm proud of it because it's like a journey. You're on a sonic journey. No song sounds alike. They're all different. And the heavy element that does come in, like on a song like Far From Heavenless, which I believe is like right in the middle of the record, It's
Hmm.
more of a slow, mid-tempo, epic, wide open kind of post-metal heavy. There's nothing really fast-paced or like blatantly within the genre of metalcore or Killswitch style. All the quote unquote heavy stuff is more slow and driving, and lyric wise and topic wise, it's heavy. But sonically on a whole, it's very diverse.
That's incredible. I can't wait to hear it because like it is very different. And the first song you guys put out, like I said, it just sets this tone, like a totally different tone for the band and the sound. I really like it.
Yeah, we're embracing more rock, more blues,
Hmm.
um, more sort of like sludgy stoner rock, post metal type stuff. And then there's even like touches of like, indie rock in there too. Like there's nothing off limits. So I think if you're a fan of Times of Grace, you're going to like this record or maybe love it. And even if you're not a fan or don't even know who we are, I think it's going to bring in newer fans as well. I think we wrote the songs where to me, they're creative and they're honest and they're real, but they do have a pop appeal. Some of them do have like pretty hooky stuff, but it doesn't feel like radio rock. It doesn't feel like, oh, you guys did this just to get on the radio. I don't think there's any of that. And we intentionally were like, no, we're gonna do stuff that's catchy but not cheesy.
Sure.
This project is very serious to Adam and I. We put our heart and soul into it. So I'm proud of it because I do think the songs are gonna stick in your head, but you're not gonna feel like, oh, this is like the format of radio. Here we go. Great.
Hmm.
There's none of that in my mind. Some people might talk about it on their message boards or YouTube or whatever. I don't care, but
Right. Who cares?
so we're very careful to keep it very artistic and creative.
I love that. I can't wait to hear the whole record. And thank you so much, Jesse, for doing this, for taking so much time to talk with me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for promoting this album and just supporting me. Really, it goes
Yeah.
both ways. I appreciate you
Yeah.
taking the time as well, man.
I love it. And I do have one more question for you before I let you go. I want to know if you have any advice for aspiring artists.
You gotta love what you do. You gotta love it with all your heart and soul because it's not easy. It's never easy, and you've got to take your lows and your highs in stride. Once you start seeing success and you're doing well, realize that that is fleeting. So be very humble. Don't step on anyone's toes on the way up, because on the way down, they might catch you and help you back up again. It's one of the hardest professions to really get into and go into, but it can also be one of the most rewarding professions to get into. So if you're attempting to do it, make sure you love it for the right reasons. Because if you're in it for the money, I got news for you, man. It's the wrong profession. If you're in it for the fame, it's going to be a weird kind of fame, and it's just not worth it unless you really love it and you're in it for the right reasons. And then if that's the case, know when to pick your battles. They always say never give up, and I don't say never give up. I say just give it your all, give it your best, but learn to choose your battles and learn to know when things aren't working out and when you need to move on to something different, whether that's a different band or a different project or maybe even a different career. Just it's a hard road to navigate, but it can be the most amazing thing you've ever done. So good luck and God bless with that.